Okay. Welcome. Um, so glad y'all have joined us today for our final session in our series that we've called Deep Dives, drawing from our WAPSA course, Writing and Publishing Scientific Articles. And today's topic kind of builds on our abstracts and titles module of the WAPSA course. And it focuses on what we have found is one of the most common problems people have when they're preparing an abstract. And that is the first draft is almost always way too long for the word limit that the journal or the conference is asking for. Today we are going to take a step-by-step approach to analyzing an abstract. It's going to be interactive, and I'm going to provide you five different ways you can look at your abstract when you're thinking about how to make it shorter. My name is Sunita Patterson. I'm an editor in the Research Medical Library, and joining me today is Brian Tutt. Brian's also an editor in the library, and Brian's going to be monitoring the chat. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the session. I'm going to stop periodically and answer them. And anyway, so with all of those preliminaries aside, I will go ahead and get started. So just to remind ourselves of the goal of the abstract. The abstract is a summary, and so it needs to capture all of the key features of the article if you're writing an abstract for a journal article, or if you're writing an abstract to submit to a conference, it needs to capture all of the key features of your study. Remember that someone may be reading the abstract later on PubMed, separated from the main article, or maybe reading the abstract in conference proceedings and won't be attending your presentation. So the abstract needs to stand alone and capture all the important points of your study and its significance. And if you are writing an abstract for an article, there shouldn't be anything in the abstract that isn't also in the article. Of course, you want to check the journal or conference instructions for format for your abstract. In particular, do they want a structured or unstructured abstract? Structured means it's divided into sections with little subheadings, and unstructured means just a solid paragraph without any subheadings. And are they asking, if they do want a structured abstract, are they asking for specific headings? Or they're asking for specific elements to be included. And then, of course, what is that word limit that you need to meet? So let's say that you have written an abstract and it's way too long. So I'm going to show you how to analyze it step by step. If you're way over the word limit, you're going to need to think about the content and cut some information. So the first three steps that we're going to go through focus on thinking about what information is essential and non-essential. So first, we're going to suggest that you analyze the key components of the abstract and how much space each optimally takes up. And then you'll want to consider what is the most important and relevant information that contributes to your primary message, which is determined by your purpose and conclusion. We'll talk more about this in a minute. And then finally, we'll look at the remaining information and see what details can be cut. They're relevant, but not crucial. So if your content is solid and you're just a few words over the word limit, then the next two steps may be sufficient to help you reach that word limit. So we'll look at eliminating extra words by rewording sentences and phrases efficiently. And then finally, as a last resort, we have a couple of tricks that might help you, mostly involving punctuation. Oops. Okay, so step one, I'm going to focus on abstracts for research projects, whether for a journal article or for a conference. But most of the principles I'm going to talk about would apply to other types of abstracts, for example, for a review article. But for research abstracts, most journals that use a structured format are going to use an outline along these lines. Background, or it might be objective, methods, results, and conclusion. And as we discussed in the WAPSA course, this outline really tells the story of your research. So if you're writing an unstructured abstract, just a solid paragraph without these headings, it's still a good idea to follow this outline and include these components in your abstract. So just to review, the brief background is basically you're presenting your purpose or hypothesis and just enough background information, maybe one sentence or two sentences, that provides just enough information for them for the reader to understand the purpose or hypothesis. Very brief methods, what you did, the key results, your main findings, and then a conclusion statement that is based on the results. And if it's not clear from that conclusion, maybe a sentence with the implications of your study for clinical practice or future research. So no matter what the word limit is, your job is to ensure that each of these pieces of information is conveyed. Now these are the guidelines that we gave in the WAPSA course for, approximate lengths for each of these sections. And, it's going to vary depending on your study and the information that you need to convey. But the general point that I want to make here is notice that the results is the longest part. And that makes sense because the results are basically the new information that you're presenting to the scientific community. So the results are going to take the most space, and the other sections are going to be quite a bit shorter. All right. So step one, when you want to shorten an abstract, is look at it, whether structured or unstructured, and think about the proportions for each of these components. You might even count the sentences, and then think about whether those proportions are ideal. So for example, if you find that you have 5 sentences for your background, that might be a good place to start with shortening your abstract. All right, step 2. Step 2 is to cut information that doesn't contribute to the primary message. What is the primary message? Well, you can identify that by looking first at the purpose statement or hypothesis. For those of you who attended our previous deep dives, Sarah Bronson gave a whole presentation on how the purpose statement is the cornerstone of the manuscript, and Brian has put the link in the chat. So the purpose is, why you did the study. That's driving the whole report. So then you want to make sure that your conclusion relates to that purpose or hypothesis. So if you think of the purpose as a research question, the conclusion answers that research question. So the two should be very closely aligned. Then think about what results support that conclusion. What needs to be included so that readers will see how you came to that conclusion. And finally, what methods do you need to include to help explain the results that you found? So if your abstract includes methods that don't have any associated results in the abstract, that might be something you could cut. Okay. So the purpose and the conclusion dictate the primary message. And as you whittle down your abstract, you want to think about Do the results support this primary message? Do the methods support it as well? All right, step 3. So now we've evaluated the basic framework of the abstract, the key components, and the important supportive information. So next, you can look for excess detail. So this is information that might be relevant, but unnecessary and easily omitted. So here's some examples of the types of information that might be unnecessary in the abstract, important to include in the main article, but in the brief format of an abstract, maybe not so important. So, you know, the classic incidence and mortality sentence, brand names, you know, specific amounts, routine procedures, raw data that could be summarized, results of, you know, experiments that are you know, preliminary or supportive experiments. And then, you know, you don't have a lot of room in the abstract for either future directions, limitations, and so forth. And one way you can think about what level of detail is appropriate is to look at very respected journals in your field and look at articles similar to the type of work that you're doing and pay attention to the level of detail that's reported in the abstract. That's a good way to get an idea of what is this, you know, information necessary, or can it be saved for the main article? All right, so now we've talked about the first 3 ways to analyze an abstract and think about what information to retain versus cut. So we're going to take a look at that sample abstract that we sent out. And Brian, if you could post it in the chat again in case anyone has joined who wants to access it. This is an abstract that I have taken a lot of liberties with. I lengthened it and you know, made some improvements, and so it doesn't resemble it. Well, it's the text that we're sharing with you, which is 467 words, is much longer and somewhat different from the actual published abstract. So this version starts at 467 words, and we're going to shorten it to 250 words. And I picked 250 because that's a very common number for you know, journals or conferences. Word limits, you know, some will ask for give a higher limit, some will give a lower limit, but I thought 250 was a pretty standard number to work with. So we're gonna take a crack at it. So let's start by thinking about step 1. Okay, so remember, step 1 was considering the key components and their proportions. So here I've pasted it in here. You don't need to try to read it here. But right now we just want to look at the proportions, like how I've highlighted the headings. This is a structured abstract. Let me go back and just read the title out loud. Intraperitoneal paclitaxel treatment for pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma with peritoneal dissemination. Okay, that's the topic. Okay. So, and I've put along the right side, I've put the number of sentences in each section. So what do you notice as you look at the proportions for each of these key components? Feel free to type in the chat, or you could unmute if you want to comment. Too many sentences. That's a lot of sentences. No wonder it's 467 words, over-explained. Yeah, there's a lot of excess detail here. Lots of brand names. we'll look at that a little bit more closely. Over-explain results. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So good. Well, you're right. It is over-explained and there are too many sentences. And if we look at the specific proportions, we do notice that the results section is the longest, which is, what I said, that's appropriate. But one thing that I notice in just looking at it at a high level is that the method section is almost as long. The method section is almost as long, and the background section is also pretty long. The conclusion is nice and short. So at this high level, and you guys have put some excellent comments in the chat that we will be looking at a little bit closer as we go a little bit more into detail. But at this point, my thinking is that when we begin cutting, we might want to look at the methods section and the background section in particular, because they just seem a little bit out of proportion. They seem longer than they need to be in relation to the rest of the abstract. Also, as y'all have correctly pointed out, there are a lot of results here, so I think we will be able to do some cutting right from the get-go in the results section. So let's take a look. Now we're going to think about step 2, which is focusing on the primary message and what information is needed to support that primary message. Okay, and just to focus on what that primary message is, here are the purpose and the conclusion. So the purpose was we compared the survival benefit of intraperitoneal paclitaxel and systemic chemotherapy combination treatment versus standard systemic chemotherapy. The conclusion is intraperitoneal paclitaxel therapy was associated with improved survival in patients with PDAC and peritoneal dissemination, and conversion surgery enhanced survival in patients who had favorable responses to chemotherapy. So definitely focused on survival benefit. Yes. All right, so now we're going to go section by section and think about what information in the abstract does not contribute to that primary message. So we're going to start with the background section, and I've created a poll so that y'all can weigh in. You should be seeing a poll now. And what I've done is I've taken the 5 sentences of this section and put them in one by one, and you can vote on which ones you think might be candidates for cutting. Which of these sentences may not be really needed in our abstract? And you can pick multiple answers. Did I accidentally end it? Okay, sorry. Let me try it again. Can you see it? Okay, good. It's working now. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll take about 10 more seconds. Okay, I hope I gave you enough time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results. Okay. All right, so we have a wide variety of answers. Let's see, the most common answer was C. The sentence about in 2013, the impact, okay, let's just start at the beginning. Okay, the first sentence is pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma is a highly lethal disease with a close association between incidence and mortality within 1 year. And a number of y'all identified that as a sentence that might be excessive. And I would agree with you that we need to know what disease the abstract, the study is about, but we don't, I think we could do without that information about incidence and mortality. It would be appropriate in the introduction of the manuscript, but we could do without it in the abstract. All right, the second sentence is talking about first-line therapeutic option, FOLFIRINOX. And there's no other mention of that in the abstract. It's not really relevant to the study. And so I would agree with those of you who said that that was a sentence that we could cut. I think so. And then the third sentence talks about the impact trial that introduced the idea of using paclitaxel in this disease site. But this historical information, again, we could probably do without. I agree with those of you who said that. Because if you look at the last two sentences, now my answer was, let's cut the first three sentences and keep the last two. That was my suggestion. And there are multiple answers probably, but I felt that the intraperitoneal, here, I'll stop sharing the results. So we can focus on this, these last two sentences. Intraperitoneal chemotherapy using paclitaxel is expected to be a new therapeutic strategy for patients with PDAC and peritoneal dissemination. So it introduces the drug, it introduces the patient population. We compared the survival benefit of intraperitoneal paclitaxel systemic chemotherapy combination treatment versus standard chemotherapy, so that now we know what the study is all about. So I think that that's enough information, and in fact that's how the original abstract did appear, just those two sentences. I think that's enough for us to understand what the study is all about. So since we have to cut a lot of words, that's my my suggestion is cut those whole three sentences. And we do need to keep the spell out of PDAC, so we explain what that is, which I deleted in the first sentence. We definitely don't want the reader to encounter an unfamiliar acronym. So yeah, and someone has commented that in addition to omitting some of the sentences, some can be combined and shortened, and I think we will be working on that a little bit later. So let's look at the methods section. I have another poll for you. This is the first part of the methods section. Okay, can you see a poll? If you're not seeing it, let me know. Okay, good. So this is the first part. So look for sentences that either for sentences that contain maybe more detail than is needed in the abstract. Okay, I'm seeing answers come in. Okay. Most people have answered, so I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results. Okay, so we have 3 sentences here. The first sentence contains the basic patient population, number of patients, where and when the study occurred. Second paragraph talks about the not having distant metastasis and how that was determined. And 11 out of 16 of y'all commented that that sentence had either contained information that could be cut, and I would agree. That feels detailed to me. And then the last section talks about how they confirmed the peritoneal dissemination and that they were excluding metastasis. And so that again felt a little detailed, and especially here I'll show you our solution, and then I'll if you want to comment further, please, I will welcome you to do so. But our solution was to combine all of that information about metastasis into a single phrase, so that we state that the patient said peritoneal dissemination, but no other sites of distant metastasis. And then we could cut that second sentence and that phrase about liver metastasis, and the information about how it was determined could perhaps go in the main article, but we decided we didn't need to know about the contrast enhanced CT imaging. Now, I'm not a clinician, so you may, if the authors or y'all may judge differently about what information really needs to be there, but this was our take as editors. So does anyone want to comment on something you may have done differently here? And we are going to be cutting more from this section later on, but at this point we were looking at what is essential versus non-essential information. Okay, I'm going to go on to the second part of the results. You should be seeing another poll. Sorry. All right, I'm watching the results come in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end. All right, so this is the this was the input on this section. So I'll show you what we did. We decided to keep this first sentence about the survival curves, the statistical analyses that were done. In the second sentence, we decided that we didn't need to say confirmed by laparoscopy or open laparotomy. I think those were already mentioned earlier in the results, so we just we took out that phrase and said confirmed. And then we decided that when patients went on to conversion surgery, or meaning surgery after the chemotherapy, if they responded to chemotherapy, they could go on to surgery. They might go on to surgery. So we decided those criteria were not necessary for the abstract. And so any other comments on what you would have done? It looks to me like y'all from the poll, it looks to me like you all had similar thoughts on that.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do we need a Kaplan-Meier method and log-rank test? They're commonly used methods, so you could omit those and just simply say they were compared.
Okay.
I'm asking, maybe there are others who may differ, but just simply say they were compared. That'll shorten it further.
And leave the details of the statistical comparison to the
in the
full
details
method
in
section.
the method section, yeah.
I think that yeah, we didn't need to cut further, so I left that sentence in. I think it's I think a little bit of information about the statistical test is useful, but I defer to the I defer to the, y'all as researchers as to what you want to read. And you're right, the details would be in the method section, so that might be a place that could be cut. And we have someone who agrees. Okay, good. Thank you for that. We might with y'all's comments, we might be able to get this thing down to 200 words, I think. But we decided to leave it in. I guess I felt, yeah. But thanks for pointing that out. All right, great. Several people agree. Thank you. That's very useful for me to know. Okay, let's look at the results. This is our last poll. This one is longer, so you should be seeing the results section. So here, while you're looking at these sentences in the poll, I'm going to put the primary message back up, the purpose and the conclusion. So you can think about what results relate to what we're presenting as the conclusion, and what results maybe aren't necessary. And here you could just look for whole sentences at this point, rather than partial sentences. Just look for whole sentences that could come out. I'm watching the answers come in. I'll put the full paragraph back up. Okay, I think most people have answered, so I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results. And we had a big variety here. We had a big variety here. So I will show you what we came up with. And, again, this is subjective, I think, but based on the fact that the purpose and the conclusion focused on survival benefit, we decided that well, looking at the middle, the two sentences about peritoneal washing cytology findings and about clinical response were not related to survival benefit. And anyway, that second sentence about clinical response is a non-statistically significant answer, so finding. So we thought those were easy to cut. We also cut the sentence about the primary tumor site. That's standard information to report in the results section, but not needed for the abstract. Definitely not needed to come to the conclusion that we came to. Now, there were comments about conversion surgery, and the purpose of the study does not mention conversion surgery as something that's being looked at. We decided to keep it in because the conclusion does mention, we'll get to, the conclusion does mention that conversion surgery enhanced the survival. So, so we decided to keep the mentions of conversion surgery in the abstract since they were kind of supporting the conclusion that was reached. That was our judgment. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that was our take. Should the title include conversion surgery? Interesting. Yeah, the title just focused on intraperitoneal paclitaxel, but you're right, conversion surgery was an element of treatment. That's a good question. Had not thought about that, but that's a great question. Okay, so with steps 1 through 3 applied, the way we edited it, we got down from 467 words to 285. So we got most of the way. And now we're going to look at ways to eliminate words when you're close to the word limit. And so a lot of these, so step 4, eliminate extra words. This is where you've got the content set, you're happy with the content, and now you're just looking for ways to word the ideas in fewer words. And so some of the things you can look for are listed here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part because two of our previous deep dive sessions touched on writing concisely. We had one on writing focused paragraphs, and we had one on focused, clear, strong, precise writing. So Brian's going to share the links to those 2 deep dives in the chat. And I encourage you, if you didn't attend those, to watch those videos to get some great tips for eliminating extra words. So I am going to, my slides do have some examples, but I think I'm going to zip through these in the interest of time. But we'll be sending out the slides afterwards, so you could definitely check those out and see some great examples of how to reduce words. But I'm going to well, I'll just zip through a couple of these points. Okay. You can watch for wordy phrases like "it was determined that," unnecessary. You can watch for prepositions. Treatment with tamoxifen can become tamoxifen treatment. You can watch for subjective words like very or quite or much. A lot of times you can take those out and still accomplish the same meaning. When you have a sentence that has phrases that are repeated again and again, you may be able to combine them. And so here you see, you know, a lot of data written in, you know, thorough wording that can be conveyed clearly by using parentheses and the word respectively to take out some of those repeated words. So I know I'm going a little fast through these, so feel free later to look at the slides and take them in a little bit more closely. This is another example where we can take out extra words. We've kept all of the data, but we've just eliminated extra words and combined ideas in a more concise fashion. Again, watch out for empty phrases, like "it is worth noting that." And when you are reporting common molecule names, proteins or genes, especially here where they're super common, but in many cases, you don't need to have the full name if you have context. So for example, here we say immune checkpoint molecules, and it's sufficient to say including OX40, PD1, and CTLA4 without providing the full names. That's acceptable. You can also watch for very, very, very common abbreviations like MRI and CT. Many journals don't require those to be spelled out, so you can check your journal instructions for standard abbreviations like that. And you know, MRI and CT are usually going to be okay to abbreviate. We did want to caution about abbreviations. Abbreviations can hinder understanding, so you don't want to get too carried away. We call it alphabet soup when there are too many abbreviations, and it's confusing because you can't remember what they all stand for. So this is an example where the second sentence uses 2 more words, but it's worth it because it's so much clearer than the shorter sentence with the abbreviations. All right. So we have 15 minutes. So I'm going to, rather than taking time to go through in a more interactive way, I'm just going to show you how we eliminated words from each of these sections. We started at 285 words, and we're trying to eliminate 35. So here's what we did in the background. We thought is expected to be a new therapeutic strategy. We could just say is an emerging therapeutic strategy and save some words that way. And then instead of saying for patients with pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma, we thought we could just delete the words patients with. Does anyone else want to comment on something they found in this background section that seems wordy? Okay, so that got us down to 280 words. The method section, here's what we did. We decided that instead of saying to confirm pathological evidence, we could just say for pathological confirmation. Instead of saying survival curves were estimated using the Kaplan-Meier method, we thought we could just say Kaplan-Meier survival curves. Of course, y'all have already pointed out that maybe we don't even need that sentence in the first place. And then because, well, we said survival curves were estimated and differences between treatment groups compared. We just felt that were could come out and the meaning would be still clear. It's still grammatically correct. So with those changes, we're down to 275 words. So anyone else have any ways to shorten this section? Okay, let's look at the results, and I'll be happy to stay at the end and chat in more detail about anything that you saw in this abstract that you would like to talk more about. But okay, let's look at the results. Patients with no peritoneal dissemination, was that in the methods? Patients with confirmed disappearance of peritoneal dissemination, and then patients with no peritoneal, yes, we could save, I think that saves 2 words. So yes, that's good. Yep. I think that works. Okay, results section. Instead of were treated with, we shorten that to received. We decided to say 9 patients received no chemotherapy and then put best supportive care in parentheses. Sometimes when you put things in parentheses, you can drop a few words. We restructured the sentence. Instead of the median survival time in the intraperitoneal paclitaxel group was determined to be significantly longer than that in the control group, we just said the MST was significantly longer in the paclitaxel group than in the control group. This word months is completely clear if it's not repeated, so we took it out here and below. And then we changed compared with to versus. Sorry, I just realized I'm probably doing my cursor on the wrong screen. Yeah. So those changes got us down to 265 words. Can we remove patients after 49? Let's see. Yes, 43 patients received paclitaxel plus various chemotherapy regimens, and 49 received standard. Yes, absolutely. Good one. Anyone else find something?
Can we say that rather than saying conversion surgery was performed in 10 patients, can we say that 10 conversion surgery patients in this group? Can we, in other words, well, I'm trying to say if we can remove the was performed. So, in other words,
okay. There were 10 conversion surgery
conversion
patients.
surgery patients. In parentheses 10 in the PTX group versus 2 patients in the control group. Well, oh no, conversion surgery performed. No, I'm sorry. That works the way it is. Fine. Yeah.
I think there's some. I think there's some room to work on that. That we could probably save some words somehow. Yeah. I think there's potential there. Okay, let's go on. So now we're down to 265. Let's look at the conclusion. Instead of patients who had favorable responses, we said patients with favorable responses. And then instead of repeating the population which appeared in the previous sentence, patients with PDAC and peritoneal dissemination, we just shortened that to this patient population. Okay. I see one more comment in the chat. Let's go back and look. 10 patients received conversion surgery. Yeah, that would definitely cut a couple of words. Compared with, or yeah, 10 people received, 10 people in the paclitaxel group received conversion surgery versus 2 patients in the control group. That would definitely, oh, okay, somebody's typed in a whole sentence. Conversion surgery patients had significantly longer MST. Oh, shortening the, nice, shortening the last sentence. Yes, that's good. That's very good. Great, that's good. Nice. Some great additions to what we had found. Okay, let me go on to our last step. So we've gotten down to 261 words. So we cut 24 words in that last step, but we're still 11 over. So now we have to get creative. And so step 5 is I'm going to show you some punctuation tricks that I was delighted to learn some of these fairly recently. Okay, so you can use hyphens, mathematical symbols to replace words. You can remove spaces before and after mathematical symbols. I'll show you an example in a minute. And then sometimes you can use, instead of having 2 independent clauses joined by the word and, you can put a semicolon or a period in there, make 2 sentences, and take out that word and. And I've got a couple last resorts I'll show you. But the thing about hyphens is that if you have 2 words connected by a hyphen, it only counts as 1 word. So in this example, the patients who had been treated with tamoxifen, if we change that to the tamoxifen treated patients, we're going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words down to tamoxifen treated counts as 1 word. So we have saved 5 words here. So I was pretty excited when I learned that. So here are some examples of how you can use hyphens. So here, instead of saying ages from 5 to 13 years, if you say 5-13, that counts, 5-13 counts as 1 word. Now this is if you're using Microsoft Word. If you're submitting an abstract in someone else, in a platform like a conference meeting platform, these may not fly. But in Microsoft Word, which is what a lot of journals use to do the word count, these tricks can save you some words. Okay, again, between and can be replaced with a hyphen. And now 2007 hyphen 2018 counts as 2 words. Range, change the word to a hyphen. Now, sometimes people will use an en dash, which is a great grammatical, great piece of punctuation. But if you replace that dash with a hyphen, you can save a word, because now Kaplan-Meier with a dash and it counts as 2 words. With a hyphen, it counts as 1 word. Of course, more than, less than, and close the mathematical symbol up to the numbers and letters before and after it. And then we go from 3 words to 1 word. And then finally, here's an example of where and is being replaced by a semicolon. Okay. If you're really desperate, you can use an apostrophe to use contractions, but these are really considered informal. So not if you're desperate, you might use that one. And then this isn't punctuation, but you could, if you were really desperate, in some instances, take out the article at the beginning of a sentence, and the sentence would still be clear. It's tricky because sometimes articles are crucial to understanding. Grammatically, the article is better here, the article but if you're desperate, sometimes they can be deleted without a loss of clarity. It's situational. So let me apply these tricks on our abstract. We were at 261, and now you can see that we have made the change here from 4 words to this counts as 2 words, and I'm going to change that dash to a hyphen in Kaplan-Meier, and that brings us down to 258 words. And then in the results section, I'm going to take these spaces out, and that is going to change each of these expressions from 3 words to 1 word. And then you can see we used a hyphen with control group, similar to the idea with conversion surgery early. So with those changes, we get down to 249 words. So we accomplished our goal. P equals you not having the 0 before the period is fine. It doesn't save you anything in the word count area. That yeah, so it doesn't matter for word count. So that's really a matter of style for your journal. Some use a 0, some don't. If you're counting characters, then taking that 0 out will save you a character. So those were my 5 steps. Consider the key components and their proportions. Cut information that doesn't contribute to the primary message. Then look for excess detail. Eliminate wordiness. And then try some punctuation tricks to get you down to the final, over that final hurdle. And I'm going to take questions. Please feel free to type questions in the chat or unmute. While you're doing that, I'm just going to show you our upcoming classes that the library is going to be presenting. And we'll be sending the slides out so you can get those links then. John has posted a link to a survey. Brian, I think, is going to post links to these classes so you can sign up. And this is our contact information. We welcome your questions about editing. We will be happy to edit your abstracts as well as your research articles and grant proposals. And so please reach out to us anytime. So thanks a lot for your participation, and I'm now happy to stay as long as there are any questions. Yeah, please feel free to unmute.
Oh, Sunita, I wanted to point out we had a question in the chat that I answered. Somebody asked if you could take out significantly if the p-value is given. And I said that, yeah, you can do that. If the p-value makes it obvious that it's significant, you can delete that word. That was a
good one.
Good call.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, y'all had some great ideas. I think I could go in and cut maybe 15 or 20 more words out of this abstract based on what y'all recommended. So thank you for your ideas. Other questions or comments?
Oh, there's a question about non-structured abstracts.
Oh, good. Okay. What I would recommend if the abstract format isn't structured is to use the same outline that we were just discussing: background, purpose, methods, results, conclusion. Use that to write your abstract as an outline, and then just make sure that the sentences work together smoothly. But the approach to writing the abstract is the same whether those headings are visible or not. Does that answer your question? Okay, let's see. Good. Yeah, thanks for your comments. Any suggestion on how to add conversion surgery to the title? Yeah, that was a good question. Let me bring that title back up. Okay. I think the focus of the article was on intraperitoneal paclitaxel treatment. It enabled conversion surgery in some patients. I guess my thinking is it probably is okay that it's not in the title, because the main idea was, the main research question was about the paclitaxel versus no paclitaxel. But I'm wondering now if the purpose of the abstract could have been written a little bit better to better the purpose doesn't mention anything about the conversion surgery, and maybe the background section should have had a little mention of that in order to provide more cohesion to the the right word, in order to make the abstract hang together better. Because you're right, the conversion surgery kind of comes up in the methods, but doesn't, when we first encounter it, it doesn't necessarily feel like it fully belongs. Any other thoughts? Anyone else have any thoughts on whether conversion surgery should be in the title, or ways to approach that? Okay, so could conversion surgery be taken out in the abstract but included in the discussion section of the manuscript? Well, that's another approach, is to simply report, if the purpose is just to compare the survival benefit of paclitaxel and chemotherapy versus just chemotherapy, then you're right, we could limit the results to just reporting on that research question, and the conversion surgery could be included only in the main article, and yeah, just not even brought up in the abstract. That would be an approach. I think my thinking about leaving it in was just purely based on the way the authors wrote the conclusion, where conversion surgery did enhance survival, and since conversion surgery made possible by the paclitaxel enhanced survival, so since the survival benefit was stated as the purpose, it seemed relevant to me. But I think there is an argument to be made for leaving it out of the abstract altogether. Any other opinions from anyone else on that topic? Some of this is subjective and really comes down to what is important in the field to the in this case, clinician who's writing this. What would other clinicians want to know, and what's important in that very specific field, and that I can't speak to as an editor. So I was, yeah. Okay, any advice on proportion of distribution of words? I think aside from this, my comments about what proportion to put on each component, and let's look at the final version to get a better sense of what's a good proportion. Okay, this was our final version. So now the results is the longest. The background is only 2 sentences. The conclusion is only 2 sentences. And the methods is, whittled down to what is important to support the results. So I think this is much better proportions than we started out with. Please feel free to unmute if you want to expand on your question.
I think I got my answer. I was mainly asking if there is no structure, and then how to just to get a sense of proportions, especially if it's in a non-structured abstract. right? So I've got 2 sentences in a background, 3 in a methods,
Mhm.
4 in results, 2 in conclusion, right?
Yeah, and on the slide, not this one. Wait a minute. I have a slide that in the WAPSA course we had some possible lengths, so maybe that would be helpful to you.
Yeah. This helps. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
good.
Great presentation.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks you all for your participation. I really appreciate it, and thanks for attending the whole series. Please feel free to reach out to us afterward if you have any further questions. Again, my name is Sunita Patterson. You can find me in the institutional director. I'm happy to answer any questions afterward. So wishing you best wishes with your writing projects. And again, thanks again. Oops.